Clearly, Zionism and the idea of the return to Zion is strongly rooted in the Torah itself, and the Hebrew prophets again and again promise that we will come back, we will return.
Welcome to the podcast, and I have with me as my guest today Rabbi Michael Freund, and he is the chairman of Shavei Israel. Graduated from Princeton University, got his MBA from Columbia, and has lived in Israel for 25 years, where he served as Deputy Communications Director under Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and then went on to found Shavei Israel, a nonprofit that has brought more than 10,000 Jews from far-flung places on Aliyah to Israel, including descendants of the lost tribes. He's been a syndicated columnist for the Jerusalem Post for 2 decades and also authored 2 books. Freund has 5 grown sons, 4 of whom are reservists in elite IDF combat units and who fought in Gaza and Lebanon over the past year. He is a loyal New York Mets fan as well. I think that's important that we throw that in there. And Michael, so good to have you with us. Welcome to the podcast today.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Well, I'm very intrigued about this conversation. And first, I want you to just tell us a little bit more about yourself. Where did you grow up? Why did you decide to move to Israel?
Well, I grew up in the New York area. I was raised in a very Zionist family with a strong sense of commitment to the Jewish people and to the Jewish state. And I became religiously observant at the age of 16. And one of the things I noticed, Jews pray 3 times a day. And one of the main requests that we make of God is to gather us in, to bring us back to the land. And It occurred to me that for 19 centuries, for the most part, my ancestors were unable to do that because of historical circumstances. But I was blessed to be born into a generation where it is possible to fulfill that dream of the generations. And so I felt compelled that to make that journey, to uproot myself and to move to Israel, where I think Jewish destiny is playing out.
Oh, that's great. Now, you use that term Zionism, and maybe we've got some people listening who are either unfamiliar with the term or they're confused about what it means. I know there's lots of use of the word Zionism in a negative context these days. Just help people listening to understand exactly what that means and what it means for you personally.
Well, Zionism is the embodiment of the desire of the Jewish people to return to their ancestral homeland and to build a sovereign state where they can live and thrive in safety and security and ultimately serve God. The land of Israel is the palace of the king, and that is where we as a people are supposed to be. Now, we were exiled by the Romans when they destroyed the Second Temple some 1900 years ago. But throughout the generations, down through the centuries, Jews always turned to pray towards Zion, towards Jerusalem. And that longing to return was one of the things that kept us going through the dark days of the exile. So Zionism in its modern form is simply the expression and the fulfillment of that historical yearning.
Well, that brings some great clarity for people who are listening. And I want to just follow through on that a little bit more. There's really a biblical mandate in the Hebrew Bible for this whole idea. I mean, the fact that one of the things that Jews prayed for every day was this gathering back, that didn't just sort of come out of thin air, right? There's a biblical mandate for that.
Absolutely. In fact, in the book of Genesis, the first Jew, our father Abraham, the first words that God said to him that are recorded in Genesis are, Lech lecha me'artzecha, leave the land in which you are and go to the land I will show you. That was the first commandment given to Abraham, and through him to all of his descendants, to go to the land. And the Bible itself, as it describes the travels of the people of Israel, concludes with them on the verge of entering the land. The narrative is all about, after being enslaved in Egypt and being liberated and delivered by God, making their way back to the land of Israel. That is the key central theme running through it. So clearly, Zionism and the idea of the return to Zion is strongly rooted in the Torah itself. And the Hebrew prophets again and again promise that we will come back, we will return. So it's deeply ingrained within us, as part of our identity, as well as part of our spiritual consciousness.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you mentioned the prophets who you believe, and I also, as a Christian, believe, spoke for God. And that would really indicate then that it is God's preference, God's idea that the Jewish people would reside in the land of Israel. Is that accurate?
Absolutely. Because it certainly doesn't say in the prophets, remain in Toronto or in London or in Texas. It over and over again, it assures us that we will go back, and we should go back, and we must go back. And in fact, God himself promises in Ezekiel chapter 39, verse 28, that when he gathers in the people of Israel from across the globe, none shall be left behind. Meaning every Jew, no matter where they are, no matter how far they might be from their heritage, God will gather them all in, down to the last one.
Well, this is very intriguing, and I want us to explore this a little bit more. But you indicated earlier, you're part of a generation for whom which this idea is now possible, but it wasn't always possible, or it didn't always seem possible. Talk to me about the tipping point. When does modern Zionism emerge, and how is it that Jews from the diaspora really begin coming back to the land of Israel?
So already in the 18th century, you had the stirrings of what would become what's called religious Zionism. In other words, there were rabbis who began to preach and write about the need for Jews to return to the land, build the land. And obviously they faced great obstacles and many difficulties, given the historical realities of the day and the political realities of the day. In the late 19th century, Theodor Herzl, who was pretty much an assimilated Jew in Austria, was taken aback by the virulent anti-Semitism that he saw. And it inspired him to begin what has come to be known as political Zionism, meaning the political movement aimed at creating support in the international community at the time for the creation of a Jewish national home in the land of Israel. Herzl unfortunately died before he saw his vision realized, but less than 5 decades later, in 1948, that dream of his came true when the sovereign state of Israel arose from the ashes of the Holocaust and reestablished Jewish sovereignty for the first time in 19 centuries.
Yeah, so the ideology was established late 1800s. Really, the Holocaust ended up being kind of the tipping point for this to happen. And it's kind of ironic. I don't want to go off script here a little bit, but it's very not ironic. It's sad. It's sad to me that we are now beginning to see the spirit of the Holocaust emerging again around the world, and we can maybe talk about that in a few minutes. But I want to talk to you about this modern Zionism, really, which is, I believe, rooted in the biblical idea, whether it becomes, political in modern times or not. It's rooted in the Hebrew Bible. But we get this sort of criticism all the time that, these modern Jews, they're not really Jews. How do you respond to that? Are they connected to the ancient people of Israel? How can we know for sure? I think it's important for people to hear this because of the misinformation that gets spouted out there.
Well, usually my initial response is to burst out laughing at that suggestion. But
thank you for restraining yourself.
Yes, because I'm not aware of any other people that faces such doubts or questions. I don't hear anyone saying, how do we know that the English today are truly descendants of the Anglo-Saxons and the Normans? How do we know that the Irish are truly descendants of the Irish? It's in effect, it is an attempt to delegitimize Israel and the Jewish people. It is, whether intended that way or not, it is a form of anti-Semitism to doubt the veracity of our identity and our claim. The fact is that we have traditions going back generation upon generation, which demonstrate clearly that we are who we say we are. And there has been a continuous Jewish presence in the land of Israel for thousands of years, even after the Jewish people were cast out by the Romans. Not all of them were cast out. Some did manage to remain, and their descendants are still living there today. We practice the same faith, we speak the same language, and we serve the same God that we have been doing for 3,000 plus years. So to question the truth of that is simply a sign of ignorance on the part of those who raise the doubts.
Well, I completely agree, and I'm really glad to hear you clarify it that way for people that are listening. And I love how you thread through the whole idea of the traditions that have been kept, even to the language and the phrasing. It was amazing to see the language come back into everyday use in the last century. And so I love all of those things about Jewish history. And I think that it's important for people to hear this. Now there's this idea of Aliyah, and in a minute, I'll have you explain to our listeners what Aliyah means and why we use the term this way. But why is it important? You mentioned Ezekiel 39, and I think that maybe that's the answer to my question. But why is it important that all the tribes of Israel return to the land of Israel?
Okay, so first, the word aliyah is a Hebrew word which means going up or to ascend. And it's used to refer to Jews who migrate to Israel. The sense of going up is obviously not geographical, because Israel is not the tallest or the highest country in the world topographically. It's a spiritual ascent. When one leaves the exile and moves, as I mentioned before, into the palace of the king, there is a spiritual component to that move. which elevates the person and it elevates the nation. So that's why we use that term aliyah, and it's actually based on a verse in the Bible when in the story of the spies that were sent to scout out the land, and Joshua and Caleb stood firm and tried to convince the people not to listen to the 10 spies who spoke badly about the land. They said, "Alo na'alev yarashnu ota," let us go up and inherit it, the land. So based on that verse of "let us go up," the word aliyah has come into use. Now, as for the second part of your question, the tribes of Israel, the entire Jewish people, the people of Israel, are one unit. And so long as one piece is missing, it is not whole. It is not complete. And we believe that God has given us a mission on a national level and also on an individual level to carry out in this world. And to use perhaps not the best comparison, but in sports, in baseball, you need 9 men on the field to do the job. If you only have 8 men on the field, you can't do the job. So we need our full team deployed on the field. That's to put it in very simplistic terms.
It's good. I like it. And, I'm going to make a confession here. I've been one of those people over the years who have thought, it's amazing that Israel's been established and that so many Jews have made their way home and made Israel their home. But do really all of the Jews have to return? I mean, if they're happy where they are and living a good life and whatever. But I want to say this. I have changed my perspective on that, especially in the last 13 months or so since the 7th of October. And I think that what's happening in the world right now and in the Middle East right now is bringing clarity to this idea that the Jews need a homeland and that it would be in their best interest to be a part of that. Do you want to just comment on that a little bit?
Absolutely. I agree that is something that many Jews have also come to realize, that as comfortable as the diaspora is, as the exile is, as well integrated as Jews are in many countries, such as the United States or Canada and elsewhere, if we look at the grand sweep of Jewish history, there are plenty of examples in which Jews held pretty much the equivalent positions of power and influence, whether it was Spain in the 15th century or even Germany a century ago. And we know how that story ended. The Jewish existence in the diaspora is a temporary matter. Now, temporary in historical terms can mean centuries. It doesn't necessarily mean a week or two. But again, if we zoom out and look at the sweep of Jewish history, there's no reason to think that even the countries that are so welcoming to us now will necessarily remain that way in the future. So a lot of Jews have been giving additional thought to the fact that it's time to go home.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, we had just a horrific example of this a little over a week ago in Amsterdam. Traditionally, one of the friendliest places to the Jewish people, and I think it's a wake up call. I really, I'm concerned. I'm not Jewish, but of course we advocate for Israel and for the Jewish people as a Christian group, and I think this is we're getting into some very, very difficult territory here, and we'll continue to make it a matter of prayer and do our best to speak the truth. But I really do believe that this movement for the Jewish people to make Aliyah and come back to Israel is something that needs to happen. And you're right; it's going to take some time, obviously. I think right now, statistically, we're just, a little over half of the Jewish people in the world are now living in Israel. I think we just sort of crossed that point in the last year and a half. But there's still millions who live in other places. And so it'll be interesting to watch. Now,
and just think about that for a moment, how miraculous that is, right? In 80 years ago, 6 million Jews were murdered. And now there are around 7 million Jews living in an independent, sovereign Jewish state. Yeah. If you go back to 1946 and someone had told you that in 2024 this would be the reality, you probably would have been institutionalized. No one would have believed it possible.
No, that's true. Very, very true. And let's talk a little bit about the work of Shavei Israel. And, one of the very intriguing things for me is this whole, it's not a concept, this whole reality of the lost tribes of Israel. And, you're doing some amazing work. But so I want to get to that. But first tell us, what led you to found this organization? What does the word Shavei mean? And tell us a little bit about the work.
Sure. Shavei Israel is Hebrew for those who return to Israel. And the genesis of it began in 1997 when I was working for Prime Minister Netanyahu in the Prime Minister's office. A small orange envelope arrived addressed to the Prime Minister from a community in northeastern India called the Bnei Menashe, the sons of Manasseh, the tribe of Manasseh. And it landed on my desk, and it was a very emotional appeal to the Prime Minister, saying that their ancestors were one of the 10 lost tribes, the tribe of Manasseh, and that they wanted to come back to the land. Now, I have to be honest, when I first read the letter, I thought it was completely nuts. I didn't believe it, but there was something very heartfelt about it, which touched me and moved me. So I chose to answer the letter. It turned out that the Bnei Menashe had been writing to Israeli prime ministers since at least Golda Meir, and probably since David Ben-Gurion and the founding of the state, but had never gotten a response. So after visiting India and seeing the traditions and the customs that they had managed to preserve, as crazy as it sounds, I became convinced that they are, in fact, who they say they are, that they are descendants of a lost tribe, and that an awakening was taking place, and that they wanted to come home. And so I went back to the book, the Bible, and I began to study more intensively, looking with an eye towards this idea of the fate of the tribes in the end of days. And much to my surprise, I realized how ignorant I was, because it became clear to me that, again, just about all the Hebrew prophets speak about how at the end of days, Judah and Israel will be reunited as one in the land. Now, Judah, I am a Jew. I am a descendant of Judah, the tribe of Judah. Mm-hmm. The Bnei Menashe are not descendants of Judah. They are descendants of Israel, one of the 10 tribes of Israel. So the fact that not only Jews such as myself are coming back, but also now that one of the lost tribes is returning, I think signifies the beginning of a new stage in the redemptive process, the beginning of the reunification of Judah and Israel in the land. So that's what prompted me to start the organization. And over the years, thank God, we've been able to bring more than 5,000 B'nai Menashe to Israel. There are still another 5,000 who are waiting to come. They've integrated very well into Israeli society. Unfortunately, just a few days ago, the first B'nai Menashe soldier died in fighting in Gaza, defending the land of Israel and the people of Israel. But they are just a wonderful addition and blessing for Israel.
Wow. Amazing story. And I read a lengthy article about your connecting with this group of people and how they began to come. And I want you to tell people the phrase that was used for I'm guessing many years by the sort of maybe matriarchs. I think it was a grandmother or a great grandmother that was referred to in the article. But what would they say that was going to happen in the future? Do you follow where I'm talking about here?
I think so. I think you might be referring to, we have the text of a lot of their ancient prayers and chants. And one of them is simply, it's remarkable. It's in their language, it's called katange, katange. Give praise to God. And there are still some Hebrew words that were preserved in it. But one of the main themes of that ancient prayer was that our elder brother Judah will seek us out, find us, and bring us to Zion. And that's exactly what is happening. The Jewish people have found Manasseh and are bringing them home.
Yeah, it's amazing. And the one thing further, I was thinking about the idea that Israel would bring them home on an iron bird. That was in the article.
Yes, and it also, of course, it fits with the biblical verse about God's promise to bring us home on the wings of eagles, with airplanes in effect being an iron eagle or an iron bird, as it were.
Yeah, I thought that was fascinating. So this is amazing. So the I want to say it right, B'nai Menashe, is that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you've discovered this, lost tribe, although it sounds like they were only lost to Israel. They weren't lost. They knew who they were. They just wanted to get back and be a part of things in the nation of Israel. But do we know of any others? Do you have any hunches about where some of these other tribes might be hiding today?
Sure. You touch on a good point, which is that no one is ever lost in the eyes of God. Mm-hmm. So even if those tribes were lost to us for so long, they were never truly lost. Currently, we know the whereabouts of 4 out of the 12 tribes of Israel. The first are Jews such as myself, who, for the most part, are from Judah. Then there are the Jewish priests and Levites, people with the last name Cohen or Levi or Levine. And they are descendants of the priests and the Levites who served in the Holy Temple. And they are from the tribe of Levi. So that's 2. The Ethiopian Jewish community had a very strong and old tradition that they were from the tribe of Dan, which the chief rabbinate accepted. So that makes 3. And now we've been blessed to find Manasseh, which is 4. There are various other communities out there which have strong claims, potentially, to Israelite ancestry. 1 or 2 of the more famous examples are the Pashtuns or the Pathans in Afghanistan and Pakistan, some of whom have Israelite names and certain customs in their tribal code, the Pashtunwali, that are clearly Judaic in origin. And then there is a tribe in southern Africa in South Africa and Zimbabwe, the Lemba tribe, which they claimed for many years to be descendants of Israel, and no one really took it all that seriously. But years ago, geneticists discovered what they call the Cohen gene, which is a unique genetic mutation that exists almost exclusively among Jewish priests. And the Lemba had a particular family that served as its priestly family down through the generations. So a professor went and did a DNA test and found, sure enough, that the Lemba's priestly family had the same unique genetic mutation that Jewish priests have, which obviously bolsters their claim to Jewish ancestry. So this is an ongoing process of discovery. And I just want to, with your permission, I just want to mention why I think it matters to Christians, or it should matter. You know, the book of Isaiah, chapter 49, God says that at the end of the days, you, the nations, you will carry us back to the land on your shoulders. Now, the verse could have said simply, the nations of the world will assist the Jewish people. But it doesn't use that terminology. It says, you will carry us. That's a very powerful imagery, because what does it mean to carry someone? When you carry someone, you are lifting them up. You are elevating them from where they are, and you are taking them to their destination. And you are hands-on and actively involved. So I believe that is a biblical mandate to all the nations of the world to roll up your sleeves and become actively involved in assisting the Jewish people to return to Zion, because that is exactly what the prophet Isaiah foretold would happen. So, you know, we all know the verse in Genesis 12:3, where God tells Abraham that I will bless those who bless you, and those who curse you I will curse. In these difficult times, I can think of no better way for people to bless Israel than to help her lost children to return home.
Wow. Well, that is truly a great reason for Christians to not only understand this, but to get involved. And thank you for sharing that. I think that that's very, very key in terms of you know, how we can, you know, not just assist, but be hands-on and get involved with helping Jews return to the land of Israel. Michael, it's been great to converse with you on here today, and you have enlightened me so much. I know that many of our listeners and viewers are going to be enlightened as well. I want to give you this opportunity before we're finished, though, to let our people know, how can they learn more about Shavei Israel, and how can they get sort of hands-on involved, as you say?
Oh, sure. You can visit our website at www.shavei, SHAVEI, shavei.org. And you can write to me at michael@shavei.org. And we're always happy to find people who understand the importance of this mission. You know, as I mentioned before, the nations of the world, you can carry us with your prayers, you can carry us with your encouragement, and you can carry us with your support. And we need all of it. And, you know, it still amazes me how it's become so routine for Jews and Christians now to partner with each other. You know, a century ago, it would have been unthinkable. And now it's become almost routine. And I think that, too, is a sign of the times, the special times in which we are living. So I hope that your listeners will pray on this and check out our website and join us in this holy task.
Thank you, Michael. And if you're listening, if you're watching, I encourage you, please go check out chave.org and write to Michael if you have questions about how you can connect. And Michael, thank you so much. It's been a privilege to speak with you today. And I hope that this is not our last conversation. God bless you, and thanks for being on the podcast today.
Thanks. God bless.
Thanks for watching. You can listen to this entire podcast on your favorite audio podcast platform. Find the link below. And while you're at it, don't forget to click subscribe and follow us on Facebook so you can stay connected to First Century Foundations.